I'm the Grub Street Lodger, and it's time for another little walk. Today we're going to Soho. As you can see there, that's the theatre where Les Mis has been playing, though currently not at the moment. And we're going into St Anne's Churchyard. We're going to pass Hazlitt's grave, though Hazlitt is a very interesting topic for another time. And we're going to look, with a little bit of motion sickness, I'm afraid, at this here. This is a plaque dedicated to one of my favourite types of historical figure, the adventurer, Theodore I, King of Corsica. The subject of these books, very hard to find a book about this, but I've read this one. I haven't read the other one yet. Partly because whenever I open it, the smell of the pages is so bad. I'm like, oh, I'll save that one. I've got another book I really want to read that stinks, all about an awful actor, which I'll definitely be doing a video about one day. But hey, Theodore von Neuhof. He was a German adventurer and a gun runner, and he became, very, very briefly, the King of Corsica. Now, I'm not really the one to be doing the political history here, but, right, so this is Corsica, and at this time, it is in rebellion. There's a rebellion in order to make it a free, independent place. There's a revolution from 1729. This actually includes someone who's often pictured with Johnson, a guy called General Paoli, because Boswell became really into Corsican national independence, and he went there and he essentially introduced Paoli to London society when Paoli was exiled from the revolution. Didn't go very well, but we're not quite there yet. Also, Boswell turned up to the Shakespeare Festival dressed in Corsican national dress, trying to get people to call him Corsica Boswell because he'd written a book about it. But there you go, that's Bozzy for you. He's a bit of a dick. Sometimes quite a nice dick, no, but endearing dick. This is all perfectly fine for talking about Theodore von Neuhof, though, because he never really set out to be a king, let us say. He was essentially a spy and a gun runner for most of his early career, and so information is a little bit sketchy, but he appears to be going around lots of different Italian states carrying out various sneaky things. And because he was a gun runner, the Corsican rebellion contacted him and said, "Can we have guns?" And he said, "Yeah, I can get you guns. I can get you guns," and started supplying them a little. And then the Corsican rebellion had trouble with leadership. They didn't quite know what to do, and so they thought what would be a good idea is if they had a king, particularly a king who wasn't Corsican, who wasn't part of any of the families. The trouble was there was a lot of very tight family, like blood feuds and things on the island. So if they had a king who wasn't Corsican, they could all unite behind this neutral figure, and they landed on poor old Theodore. And so he was crowned King of Corsica. He is the only King of Corsica, and he was only King of Corsica for a few months. Things did not go very well. They didn't get hold of any of the guns that they were hoping for, and he ran away. He's probably most famous now for appearing in Candide. He's one of the deposed kings who's hanging out in Venice. I mean, he wasn't born a royal. He just sort of had it thrust on him. Well, he agreed to it, and they had a coronation and everything, and he styled it as himself as King of Corsica for the rest of his life. So after this, he wandered around Europe. He had a bit of a bad name for himself now because he'd become a king of a failed revolution. And I mean, what happened with that was France ended up swooping in and taking over. And there was a little general born there called Napoleon, and Napoleon would not have been part of the French army if Theodore von Neuhof had succeeded him and his Corsican rebel pals. I know this is a very loose and shifting talk about this. There's probably more structured discussions somewhere, but I just find this a really interesting story. And he got to London, and he was a celebrity because, of course, he was this strange king person for a bit. But he didn't do so well with the money, and so he ended up in debt. And what he did to get rid of this debt was he essentially sold Corsica, which he didn't have. It wasn't really his. But to become bankrupt, he had to essentially sell the claim of his right to Corsica to the guy he was in debt to. And then he lived for a bit under various people helping him out, including Walpole, not Prime Minister Walpole, our pal Walpole. Oh, where's he gone? He's down here. Horace, writer of Castle of Otranto. And then when he died, Walpole wrote a very good epitaph, and I'm going to have to pull it up on my computer because I do not remember one of the epitaph. Here you go. The grave great teacher to a level brings heroes and beggars, galley slaves and kings. But Theodore this moral learned ere dead. Fate poured its lessons on his living head, bestowed a kingdom, and denied him bread. So there you go. That's the epitaph of the King of Corsica, who indeed has a crown on his epitaph. So that's pretty cool. Just having a look, see if there's any other little details. I think that'll do us for now. But a very interesting man, buried there at St Anne's in Soho, along with Hazlitt, who is also a very interesting person. And it's quite a nice place to go for a lunch on a sunny day when everything's open. It has these massive gates outside it to stop various drunk people pouring in at later times. But that was today's trip. Hope you enjoyed it.